I'm Russell Pearson, and I'll be reading from These Threads Who Lead to Bramble, which has been nominated for a 2025 Big Other Book Award for Nonfiction. I wanted to thank John Madera and Big Other, and I also wanted to thank my publisher, Dzanc Books. I was going to read just a couple pages from a section of the book, and this is from a chapter called the Book of Mark. Esther never mentions God. The Book of Micah includes this simile, like waters poured down a steep place. The Book of Lamentations of Jeremiah ends with the question, Art thou exceedingly angry with us? Mark is the second book of the New Testament, written before the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. The book of Mark was a source for the books of Matthew and Luke. The other source for the books of Matthew and Luke is Q. The German word for source is Quell. Q does not exist, but it can be guessed. Matthew plus Luke equals Mark plus Q. Solve for Q. A Bible on the bottom shelf of a bookcase in the room where I write, between two books on the American Civil War. In the first chapter of Mark, we learn that Jesus was baptized by John and Jesus healed the sick, among them a leper who was instantly cured by the touch of the hand of Jesus. A faith healer my father brought me to when I was 9. An outdoor shrine we stood in the sun as far back, an audience on a hill. I might have been on my father's shoulders. The faith healer was a father, Diorio, a priest who stunned the sick and broken with his hand. He was small from where we stood. He knew the numbers of his broken. Will the 6 who are with us today with arthritis of the knees come forward and approach the stage? And they did. Stooped, shuffled, carried, stiff. The father laid a hand on each, and each was thrown backward by some wind or shock who visited. I wasn't called up. My father wasn't cured. We waited far back with our hidden ills and left early. In Mark, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea. Because there were so many followers and so many sick, Jesus told his disciples to get a boat ready in case the crowd became unruly and dangerous. The Son of God asked his disciples to ready a boat. Mark was my father's best friend, Mark Sanella. My father and Mark listened to jazz and smoked cigarettes and drank beer and talked into late nights of jazz around them on the record. The basement at Ball Street, or driving at night in Oxford, Mass. There are no books or maps I can trace back to this. In Mark, Jesus gets a boat ready. Also in Mark, 4 associates of a paralytic removed the roof of the room where Jesus was preaching and lowered down into the room the paralytic on a pallet. In Mark, Jesus controlled the weather and the roughness of the sea, sent 2,000 pigs to their death by drowning, split a loaf of bread between 5,000 men, walked on the surface of the sea to the astonish of his disciples, and restored the hearing and the speech of a man who lacked both. Just after feeding 4,000 followers with 7 loaves of bread and a few small fish, Jesus smartly got into his boat and left with his disciples. In Mark, there's talk of the saltness of salt and the salt of fire, or the fire of salt, and the suggestion to salt yourself and be at peace with one another. The blind have their blindness removed, and the first things they see are trees in motion, but they later learn those trees are men. One night, my father and Mark ran out of gas, and Mark ran miles along the shoulders of the black roads to the service station and then ran back to the car with a jerry can where my father was waiting. Mark was an athlete, track and field. Or maybe it wasn't a service station, but Mark's house and back. Or early morning, or raining, cross country, a light rain. There are no maps I can trace back to this, no books to look it up in. What I make of my recollection is a faded rag and left somewhere to settle. I don't know what my father knows. Of land, I'll inherit an acre of it that has a stone wall on the west, south, and east lot lines. I hid things in the west wall when I was young, when the wall was over my head and milkweeds taller than me grew in the field downhill behind it. This lot has been for sale for years, but no one has made an offer. The sign by now, it must be gone or faded. Peter, in Mark, under the spell of the vision of a shimmering Christ, sees also visions of Elijah and Moses. Peter offers to build a booth for each of his visions. In the book of Mark, my father and Kenny Berthium have a plan to meet Mark at a rendezvous spot after Mark sets fire to a vacant house. My father and Kenny drove by the spot a few times, but as the house became more involved and Mark didn't show, they drove home. Mark jogged the few miles back to Kenny's. It was July 4. One of their friends was a volunteer fireman and earned $50 each time he was called to fight a fire. The plan was to split the money or to buy beer with some of it, split the rest. In the book of Mark, Kenny Berthium's father was a pharmacist, a druggist. It was Kenny's father who put together the ergo formula for Mark's girlfriend to terminate what they came up with, who was then inside her. The son of Mark ended by the druggist. There would be no son of Mark, as there is no book of Mark. Thank you.